The pink glass creamer sitting behind your good dishes, the one with the tiny cherry branch pressed into the glass, has been passed down without anyone ever really looking at it. Some pieces like it sell for $10. Others, from the very same cabinet, have sold for over $3,000. Number 1 on this list is a pattern almost every one of you owns without knowing it, sitting in a cabinet or a box in the attic right now. Let us see if you own one. Cameo ballerina. Somewhere in the back of the cabinet is a green tumbler or a small plate with a dancing figure etched faintly into the glass, ribbons trailing behind her. Most people walk past it thinking it is just old green glass, the kind every grandmother seemed to own. That instinct makes sense. Green depression glass is common, and this pattern is one of the most common of all. Here is what the pattern is actually called. Hawking Glass Company released it in 1930, and collectors nicknamed it Cameo, or the ballerina pattern, or the dancing girl, after the etched figure herself. Production ran only 4 years before Hawking moved on to newer molds, which is part of why certain pieces are harder to find than the green ones filling every antique mall table. A plain green tumbler brings $10 to $20, about the cost of a takeout dinner for 2. Your test tonight is simple. Turn the piece over and look at the base. If the ballerina is etched clearly, mid-twirl, with visible ribbon lines and no blurring, you are holding a genuine Hawking piece and not a later imitation. Keep this pattern in the back of your mind, because this same dancing girl comes back later in this list wearing a very different color, and the price is nothing alike. Most people sell the green ones in a box lot for a few dollars each, without ever separating out the ones worth checking twice. And once that box leaves the house, there is no getting it back. Iris and herringbone. There is a candy jar or a small vase on the shelf that catches the light strangely, throwing off a faint rainbow sheen that most people assume is dust or a trick of the window glass. No one faults you for never looking twice at it. It looks like ordinary glass with a cheap, iridescent coating, the sort of thing sold at a fair. Here's the truth. Jeanette Glass Company built this pattern, called Iris and Herringbone, starting in 1928, and pressed a genuine iridescent finish directly into the glass to compete with fancier cut crystal during a decade when almost nobody could afford fancier cut crystal. The pattern is instantly recognizable by its sunburst of iris petals radiating out from the center, ringed by thin herringbone lines. A common iridescent tumbler brings $8 to $20. A demi-tasse cup and saucer set in good condition has sold past $150, and a complete candy jar with its lid intact can bring considerably more than that. Your test tonight is to hold the piece up to a lamp and turn it slowly in your hand. A genuine iridescent finish throws an even rainbow sheen across the whole surface, catching every angle. A cheap modern imitation looks patchy, with color pooling in some spots and vanishing in others. That candy jar has likely sat holding buttons or spare change for 30 years, and the shine everyone assumed was just cheap glass was the exact thing that made it worth keeping. Princess. A small octagon-shaped salt shaker or a low candy dish with an 8-sided silhouette sits near the good china, usually in pink, sometimes in a pale green. It gets ignored because it looks plain next to the fussier floral patterns beside it. That is a fair thing to assume. Here's what the shape never told you. Hawking Glass Company released this pattern in 1931 and called it Princess, and most of it was pressed in pink and green. A smaller run came in a pale amber yellow shade collectors call topaz, and that color makes up a fraction of total production because Hawking simply made less of it. A plain pink princess plate brings $10 to $25. A topaz candy dish or salt shaker in that same pattern has sold for well over $100, sometimes closer to $200, because so few were pressed in that color to begin with. Your test tonight is to hold the piece next to a white sheet of paper in daylight. Pink and green are common. If what is in your hand reads as a warm honey or amber yellow, rather than true green, you are not holding the common version. You are holding the scarce one. A candy dish in that color has sat priced at $2 in 100 estate sales because the seller assumed yellow-tinted glass just meant sun damage when it meant the opposite. American Sweetheart. A dinner plate or a serving platter with a soft, scalloped edge and a pale, almost translucent white-pink color has probably held Sunday dinner more times than anyone in the family can count. It looks delicate, almost fragile, and people tend to assume delicate means cheap costume glass rather than anything worth protecting. Here's the pivot. Macbeth Evans Glass Company made this pattern, American Sweetheart, from 1930 to 1936, and the pale, milky white-pink shade is called Monax, a Macbeth Evans color made with a specific opacifier in the glass mix that most competitors never matched. A common Monax dinner plate brings $15 to $35, close to a tank of gas. A large console bowl or a lazy Susan serving piece in that same shade has sold for $200 to $300 because those larger serving forms were made in far smaller numbers than the everyday plates. Your test tonight is to hold the piece against a plain white wall. True Monax glass reads as a faint, warm, pink-white glow rather than stark white, almost as though the glass has a light behind it, even with none there. If your plate does that, it is the real color, not a bleached imitation. That platter has carried 100 holiday meals, and nobody thought to ask what the glass itself was worth while they were washing gravy off it. Sharon Cabbage Rose. There is a rose-patterned dish somewhere in the cabinet with a domed lid that does not quite match, or worse, no lid at all. And most people assume the mismatch means the piece is already ruined. No one faults you for thinking a broken set is a worthless set. Here is what nobody tells you. Federal Glass Company made this pattern, called Sharon or Cabbage Rose for its layered rose design, starting in 1935, and the cheese dish in this pattern originally came with a separate wooden base and a wooden lid insert that held the glass dome in place. Those wooden pieces were the first thing lost or thrown out over 90 years of moves and cleanouts, which is exactly why a complete cheese dish, wood base included, is now one of the harder pieces to find in the entire pattern. A glass dome alone, no base, brings $20 to $40. A complete cheese dish with its original wood base has sold for $200 to $400, close to a car payment. Your test tonight is to go look for that wood base separately, in a drawer, a box of odds and ends, or the back of a cabinet, because people frequently keep the wood piece without ever realizing it belongs to the glass dome sitting 3 feet away. That wood base has gone into a donation box more times than anyone can count, because on its own it looks like a stray scrap of some unrelated antique, rather than half of a matched valuable pair, and once it leaves the house, no lid ever finds its way back to a lonely glass dome. Before we get to the top 5, there is something most people never stop to see. None of the pieces on this list look expensive. They look like ordinary kitchen glass, because that is exactly what they were built to be. Sold cheap during hard years, so every household could afford a full table setting. The value was never sitting in how a piece looked on a shelf. It sits in a small set of signals, the maker's mark or the lack of one, the condition of the piece, and whether it is whole, lid included, base included, nothing chipped away. For anyone who wants to walk through those signals piece by piece, there is the Depression glass pattern and price guide, where every mark, every dating clue, and every condition check gets laid out in plain language. It is linked below if you want it. Now, back to the countdown. From this point up, every pattern named is one somebody has learned to fake, so pay closer attention than you did for the first 5. Royal lace, a dark blue butter dish or a covered bowl, almost black in low light, has probably sat unused for years because cobalt blue never quite matched anyone's actual kitchen. That is a reasonable reason to shelve something. Here's the truth about that color. Hazel Atlas Glass Company began producing this pattern, royal lace, in 1934, mostly in pink, green, and clear crystal. Cobalt blue was a much smaller production run, added because the color sold well, but cost more to produce consistently, so Hazel Atlas made far less of it before moving on. A pinker crystal royal lace butter dish brings $30 to $60. A cobalt blue royal lace butter dish, lid and base matching, has sold for close to $700, roughly a month's rent in a lot of this country. Your test tonight is to hold the lid up against the base and check the blue itself. On a genuine matched pair, the color is identical edge to edge. Mismatched pieces, a lid from one dish paired with a base from another over decades of moving house, show a faint difference in shade once you look for it. A matched cobalt royal lace butter dish has been sold off in a yard sale box for $5 next to a stack of Tupperware because nobody thought to check whether the two blues actually matched. Mayfair Open Rose, a footed serving bowl with large open roses pressed into the glass and scrollwork running along the rim, sits high on a shelf, usually because it is too big and too fussy looking for everyday use. No one faults you for keeping something that pretty out of reach of everyday dinners. Here is the pivot. Anchor Hawking made this pattern, Mayfair, sometimes called Open Rose, starting in 1931, mostly in pink. Most Mayfair pieces sit flat on the table. A smaller number were pressed with a separate footed base, and that single detail, 4 small legs instead of a flat bottom, changes the value of the entire piece. A flat pink Mayfair bowl brings $25 to $50. A footed pink Mayfair casserole bowl, in excellent condition, has sold for over $3,000 at auction, more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. Your test tonight is to turn the bowl over and look at the bottom. If it sits flat, it is common. If it stands on 4 small pressed feet, stop everything and set it somewhere safe before you do anything else with it. A footed Mayfair bowl has been used for years as a fruit bowl on a kitchen counter, chipped a little more with every dinner, because nobody ever turned it over to look. Miss America, a pressed glass tumbler or shaker with a raised diamond, almost pyramid-like texture, sits in the cabinet catching light in every ridge, usually dismissed as fancy glass. Nobody wants to wash because of all those ridges. That is a fair complaint. Here is what the ridges never told you. Hawking Glass Company made this pattern, known as Miss America, starting in 1935, primarily in pink and clear crystal, with a small quantity pressed in a pale ice blue that was never a major production color. That ice blue run was so limited that most collectors go years without seeing a piece in person outside of a museum case or a serious private collection. A clear or pink Miss America tumbler brings $10 to $25. An ice blue piece in this pattern can sell for several $100s, and on the rarest forms, considerably more than that. Verify, simply because so few were ever pressed in that shade. Your test tonight is the same white paper test from earlier in this list. Hold the piece against plain white in daylight and look for a cool, pale blue-gray tint rather than true clear or pink. If it reads blue against the white, it is not ordinary Miss America. It is the shade collectors actively hunt for. A shaker in that exact color has been sold in a mixed lot for $2 because it looked, at a glance, like slightly dirty, clear glass. Cameo pink shakers. Remember the green dancing girl from the start of this list? Here she is again, in a color almost nobody kept. A pair of small glass shakers with metal lids. The same etched ballerina figure pressed into pink glass instead of green sits in the back of a cabinet, usually assumed to be a leftover from a set that got broken up years ago. No one faults you for assuming a lone shaker pair is worth less than the full set it came from. Here's the truth about that color. Hawking made the Cameo pattern in pink for only a short window between 1930 and 1934, and pink was always the smallest production run of the 4 colors, far behind the green pieces everyone recognizes. A pair of pink Cameo shakers with their original metal lids has sold for over $1,000. More than most people's monthly car payment, while the identical shaker pair in green brings a fraction of that. Your test tonight is to check the color against the green tumbler from earlier in this list, side by side if you still have both, or against a photo if you do not. If what is in your hand reads pink rather than green, and the metal lid is still attached and threading properly, do not let it leave the house before someone who knows the pattern has looked at it. A pink Cameo shaker pair sat in a junk drawer for years next to loose batteries, because pink looked, to everyone who saw it, like the cheaper color when it was the other way around. Cherry Blossom. This is the one nearly every one of you owns. It is the pink glass with the delicate branch of cherry blossoms pressed across a cup, a plate, a sugar bowl, or a full set stacked in a box in the attic that nobody has opened since the last move. Go look in the china cabinet, the top shelf of the pantry, or that box marked Grandma's dishes that has followed the family through 3 houses. Jeanette Glass Company began producing this pattern. cherry blossom, in 1930, and it became so recognizable, so instantly associated with Depression-era glass in general, that most people who have never studied a single piece of glassware in their life can still name this pattern on sight. Here is the myth that needs killing. Fame is not value. The pattern everyone recognizes is almost never the one worth the most, because the entire world already owns one, and because a pattern this famous became one of the most heavily reproduced Depression glass patterns ever made, starting in the 1970s and continuing for decades after, with new molds copying the branch and the cherries closely enough to fool most people at a glance. A large share of the pink cherry blossom sitting in cabinets across this country right now is not from 1930. It is from a reproduction run made 40 or 50 years later, worth closer to $10 than anything else. Here's the reframe. The value was never in the name everyone recognizes. It was in the details nobody bothers to check. The exact same lesson every single item on this list has been teaching from the very beginning. Your final test tonight uses that same skill. Find the cherries pressed into the glass and count the small round bumps at the top of each cherry, where the stem meets the fruit. Original Jeanette pieces from 1930 show 2 bumps. Reproductions almost always show 3. 2 bumps and a genuine dinner plate or a covered butter dish can bring $60 to over $100, sometimes considerably more for rarer serving pieces and the harder to find Delphite blue color. 3 bumps and the piece is a later reproduction, pretty on the shelf, worth closer to what a cup of coffee costs. Count the bumps before you count anything else in that box, because the pattern that started this whole list, the one nearly everyone watching already owns, was never valuable because it was famous. It was valuable, when it was valuable at all, for a detailed 2 millimeters wide that almost nobody has ever thought to check. Do not sell a single piece before you count the cherries. Number 1 is likely above your own kitchen counter right now. Go look. If this helped, tap like. It helps this reach someone else about to sell a box of grandma's old dishes for $1 at a yard sale. Subscribe for next week's video, where we go through 10 pieces of old silverware sitting in kitchen drawers that are worth far more than the set they came from. And down in the comments, tell me, what's the oldest toy or dish in your house, and whose was it originally? I read every single one.